Drug Foundation, and I must say I look forward very much to the select committee process so that hopefully we can get it into optimal shape. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the Honourable Annette King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise and support the Psychoactive Substances Bill because it does one very significant thing. It regulates unregulated psychoactive substances, in other words, party pills and legal highs. And it does that by shifting the onus of responsibility to the manufacturers, who will now have to demonstrate that the substance that they are putting into the market poses no more than a low risk, and they must do that before they go on the shelves and into the pockets and at the parties and clubs and pubs around New Zealand. That makes sense. Why should New Zealanders not know that a substance that they are going to take is, as far as possible, a low risk to them? We expect that with our pharmaceuticals, we expect that with our food. Why would we not expect that from party pills and other substances? You think, I believe that many New Zealanders had no knowledge of the effect of party pills on them. They had no knowledge of the content of them, and in many cases they were playing Russian roulette with the substances that they were taking. And they were being sold, some of them who were more interested in making a fast dollar than they were in the quality of the product that they were providing to young New Zealanders in particular. So, well, yes, and as the member across said, making millions of dollars out of these products. We expect high quality standards for products that are sold in New Zealand. These substances should not be exempt from that. So it's a good bill as far as it goes. But I agree with my colleague, Ian Lees-Galloway, that there was a chance to completely overhaul the Misuse of Drugs Act 1975. It is an old act, it's out of date, and there was an opportunity to do a proper overhaul of this act. I mean, they did start long enough ago so that this could happen, but they failed to. Work was done by the Law Commission, but only one of their recommendations has been picked up. And it seems to me that this is almost a repeat of the government's response to the Law Commission's report on alcohol reform. And in that work, tremendous work done by the Law Commission, normally providing a bill as well, but stopped by the previous Minister of Justice, and then the new Minister of Justice picking the eyes out of the alcohol reform report from the Law Commission, and in my view, not taking the comprehensive approach that was needed to make major changes to alcohol. And I was very interested to hear on the television yesterday members of the New Zealand Police and the judiciary, a judge in New Zealand saying we have not gone far enough with alcohol reform. So I'm concerned that we haven't taken the opportunity to do a major rewrite of the Misuse of Drugs Act. It is a lost opportunity. Everybody knows that the law hasn't kept pace with the rapidly changing environment that we have in this area. And as the member, Paul Hutchison, has just said, the ability to produce one of these substances and then quickly change it by adding something else to it has meant it's been very hard for the legislation we have to keep up with it. So in March last year, Ian Lees-Galloway called for urgent action. Now, we're talking over a year ago, he was calling for urgent action, particularly in unregulated synthetic cannabis. And so what the government did at that time was to put in place an interim measure to ban new substances for 12 months. And now we're at this stage where we're having to race to pass legislation. You see, this whole process started in July 2007 under the previous Labor government. We invited the Law Commission to review the Misuse of Drugs Act in response to concerns that the safety of substances that people were taking was not required before sale. And as is well known, the Law Commission carried out a first principles review. And in that first principles review, they took into account issues such as international obligations. And in February 2010, they published their issues paper. It then went through quite an extensive public consultation process. There was some targeted consultation, but also public consultation, and I believe there was over 3,800 submissions to the work that was done by the Law Commission. In May 2011, Mr. Speaker, the final report of the Law Commission was tabled in this House. That is almost 2 years ago, and the urgent need to do something was known back in 2007. The Law Commission identified two key issues. One, that there was little or no control over potentially harmful psychoactive substances in the ingredients, in the dose, in the place of sale, or the purchase age. Quite fundamental things, I would have thought, Mr. Speaker. There was little or no control over it. What was in it, what the dosage was they were taking, where it could be sold, or the purchase age. And the second issue that they identified was the onus is on the government to identify that substances are available and then determine whether they are harmful before placing restrictions on them. In September 2011, the government responded to the Law Commission. And as you know, here we are now, quite a long time later. So what is the objective of the bill that we have got? It is to develop a regime capable of dealing with the rapidly evolving market in psychoactive substances, balancing the risk of harm to individuals and society with the demand for access to such substances. And let's face it, there is a demand for such substances. Maybe in the 50s and 60s it was Rochdale cider. Today there is a demand for party pills and other substances. What they say, Taranaki green, well, I've never heard of that, I have to say. But this regime, this is what this bill does. It provides a mechanism for effectively regulating the psychoactive substances before they reach the market. It provides public confidence about the risk profile of these substances. It places controls on the availability of psychoactive products, including purchase age and also place of sale. It places controls over the product's contents, the dose, the potency, and so on. So it does have quite a number of parts to the bill in terms of what it wants to do. When you read the regulatory impact statement, it was prepared for the Cabinet, and they were given 4 options to address the 2 problems that I have just mentioned that the Law Commission identified. They have agreed on the approach that is in this bill. There are several things that this bill also does. It sets up a psychoactive substance regulatory authority and an expert advisory committee. Now, their job is going to be, the authority itself is going to be the Director General of Health, and it also establishes the expert advisory committee, and it's going to be their job, their main function, to evaluate the psychoactive substances and products, and then to advise the authority as to whether these products should be approved for use by individuals. And the members of that advisory committee are appointed by the authority after consultation with the Minister who will be responsible for the administration of the bill. There's also a licensing regime, and there is part of that I'd like to mention. My colleague mentioned there is no requirement for a licence for retail, at the retail end. I'd also like to say what happens if these substances are produced overseas and then imported, because the bill requires the authority to issue a code of practice for the manufacture of psychoactive substances, and the authority may conduct an audit of the manufacturing facility where the substance had been manufactured. Now, if they're being manufactured in another country, how is that going to happen? What resources are going to be put in place for the authority to be able to travel to another country to check out their manufacturing of these substances. The bill also applies for appeals, so it enables an appeal committee to determine whether the decisions of the authority for licensing and approval are correct. And there also is put in place offences when there is unapproved psychoactive substances on the market, quite a hefty fine. So it is comprehensive. It could have had more in it, but we will support this bill. It's as good as far as it goes.
Mr. Speaker. I call the honourable member Kevin Haig.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Regulation's a good thing, isn't it? Particularly